You're wrong because there's no music playing. What is going on, everybody? It is time for the Stokastic NFL strategy show for week one. So it's been a minute since we did this. Usually it was Neil Orfield and I doing this together last year, but a little bit of a mix-up this year. Well, for one, Neil's on vacation right now, but we've got Rebecca here, Rebecca Kennedy. If you guys are not familiar with her, she is RJ Kobik over on Twitter. She is a Millionaire Maker winner, so she's taking Neil's spot, although we're also going to have Neil back here next week. And then we've got Geoff here. If you guys remember Geoff Ulrich, he's over at DraftKings doing a whole bunch of stuff, and him and I used to do this show together. He's from Canada, so that's everybody's qualifications here. Rebecca, Millionaire Maker winner. Geoff, Canadian. From Canada. Geoff, yes. What's happening, man?
Millionaire Maker loser and from Canada. That's about as far as my resume goes, man. No, I'm glad to be back here. Glad to be back with you guys. And I mean, obviously, week one NFL. Oh, I got a whole day here to talk about it. So,
yeah, it's been a while since we had football. It kind of feels like it never left, though, which I'm not really sure why that is, but it does feel like we just had football slate fairly recently. Guys, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, helps us out a whole bunch. And Rebecca, is there anything you want to tell to the people now coming on, doing your first show? If not, it's no big deal, but just wanted to give you a chance to say hi.
Nothing in particular, just that keep grinding, keep doing what you guys are doing. And I love seeing all the support on Twitter, and I love communicating with you guys. So keep hitting me up.
Yeah, and once again, Rebecca over on Twitter, that is RJAKOBEK. Also, today's show, sponsored by BetMGM. Geoff, I've got a quick question for you. I don't know what Canada's like that. Do you guys like free money over there?
Yeah, I tend to, that's one of the only ways I profit, Greg, in playing these games. So yes, I do tend to like free money.
Have you ever wanted to have so much free money that you could buy anything you wanted to? Like, you go to the car dealership and you're like, oh, what is that? A Lamborghini? I'll take it. Would that interest you, having that amount of money?
It would, Greg.
All right. So I have good news for you. BetMGM, sponsor of the show. They have a new deal just for this weekend, for week one of the NFL season. If you sign up, clicking on the link below in the description box, and you place a $10 bet on anything over on BetMGM, they're going to give you $200 for free, and you use that. You buy a hotel, you buy a new Ferrari, Lamborghini. I don't know what $200 buys these days. I know inflation is pretty crazy, but it's $200 for free. Take advantage of this offer, and that's it. There's no way you can lose. It is risk-free. So BetMGM, if you guys haven't signed up yet and you want some money in your pocket to start off the football season, this is a good offer to take advantage of. But let's talk about the DFS slate as well. Time to get into that. And starting by talking about the quarterback position. If you guys aren't familiar with how we usually structure the show, we go position by position, just talk about our favorite tournament plays at each position. So quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I say defenses could go fuck themselves, so I don't usually like to talk about them. If there's time, we'll hit on it at the end, but there almost never is because I make sure there isn't. But starting at quarterback this weekend, Geoff, we only have two QBs over on DK that are projected for double-digit ownership. That is Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. So this is a fairly spread out QB slate. And then over on FanDuel, there's a little bit more chalk at the position, but still nothing really crazy. Jalen Hurts, about 14% ownership. Patrick Mahomes, 13%. So how are you looking at the QB position in week one? Is there any one individual guy that stands out to you above the rest?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously QB is always a position where you get a lot of spread ownership, and just for people watching, I will make sure we have time for DSTs just to make Greg talk about it. But, QB isn't it's a position where I don't think you have to take hard stances. I think for me with the QB is that, is there some way to gain like leverage off a more popular player, or do I just want the value and do I just want to take like a higher risk proposition? So it's completely fine to go with, with one of the chalky QBs. Like Jalen Hurts is in a fantastic position, I think. I mean, it's, he's been more efficient in the offseason. He's now got AJ Brown, which I think boosts his upside as a passer as well. But, it's week one. We're playing against huge fields. I mean, what about going to the other side of this and stacking Jared Goff, like right off the bat? Let's just get crazy with like Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, and stacking the game that way. I mean, Goff was pretty solid off with St. Brown towards the end of the year when he was really coming up. Now he's got Swift to work in the short passing game too. So, I mean, again, this isn't like my top tournament. I wouldn't play this in like a single entry if it was my only play, but we're talking tournament plays. I think that's an interesting way to gain leverage off what's going to be the most popular quarterback in the field this week. But, again, like it's spread ownership. I mean, I don't think there's a long list of quarterbacks that I'm not super interested in, but like, I'm not going to get off the good quarterbacks either this week because like, we have Mahomes up there. These guys are all going to kind of suck ownership away. And I don't think that no one's going to, maybe on FanDuel with Hurts, but DraftKings especially, I think you'll still see spread ownership. So.
Yeah. And then Rebecca, I want to ask you, because like I said, there's only 2 quarterbacks this week that are projected for double-digit ownership. One of them is Jalen Hurts. The other is Patrick Mahomes. If you do look at the boom bust tool that we have over at Stokastic.com, which is something that I use to build my lineups a lot, we do have Jalen Hurts by far as the quarterback most likely to be optimal this week. So 11.7% ownership over on DK with a 19% chance to be optimal, whereas Mahomes coming in just under 10% chance to be optimal. And then over on FanDuel, Jalen Hurts north of 20% chance to be optimal. So if you're paying up for a quarterback, is Jalen Hurts the one that you're gravitating towards, or is there somebody else you like more as a pay up option this weekend?
Honestly, like there's a time that I don't mind eating the chalk and taking that popular person because they are very valuable. And it just, then it's a wash. We all just take that person and it's cool. But this is not one of those cases. I would fade any of the most popular ones because one thing I've noticed about football, especially week 1, is that everybody is building up so much hype. So once they, they're so excited that football is coming back. Once they catch wind that that's what some people are doing, then it's like everyone jumped on that train so hard and they're not talking about so much value on the slate that I think you could find. I think there's a lot of really good, inexpensive guys week 1. And so you just have to look for the low owned value play. Like I was even looking at, with Devonta Adams and the Raiders now, that could be a good option, but I wouldn't necessarily stack Carr with any of the players there. So that was kind of the problem I was having, just because you don't know how Devonta is going to do. But I like the idea of throwing a dart and doing Jameis Winston, just because he seems like the kind of guy that just comes out of the gates like really hot. And sometimes like there's just guys who play better the first week and then they fall off. Just find those guys that just like always have that momentum first week and then later you can start going up. That's what I normally do, but I shouldn't even say that because last year I paid up for Kyler Murray and it helped me win the mill. So maybe I shouldn't.
So you're obligated. So you're obligated to play Kyler Murray this week, then.
I do that sometimes. If someone gives me success, I feel like I owe it to them and I'll play them again. But if it's like a second option and not just the one, but I just was trying to get creative with week 1, and there's just so much you can do. I think there's a lot of creativity to be had.
And you don't want to upset Kyler Murray. If you don't play him this week, he's going to know, right? It's going to impact his performance. He's going to be like, what's going on here? Rebecca, I won her $1 million last year, not playing me. Now, what am I going to do about it?
Everybody knows when I play them because then they just decide, like baseball players decide to not hit home runs on the day I play them. So somehow they just know.
So, Geoff, I want to ask you now about the quarterback position. And, it is, if I'm being honest, how I'm going to be building my lineups this week. I'm going to be really spread out at quarterback. There's not really any one that stands out above all the others in our tools. Jalen Hurts is projected to be the highest optimal by a decent amount. And I do think that he makes some semblance of sense to run out naked in some lineups. But I am going to be pretty spread out in terms of my quarterback exposure this week. But I asked you about the pay up options. I didn't really ask you as much about the pay down options. So I'm wondering if you had to punt with one player at QB this weekend, who is it that you would gravitate towards?
Yeah. Like, are we talking like total punt or are we just talking like kind of like value-ish? Like, do you want like a 5K guy or do you want like, what are we aiming for here?
We could call it anybody below the 6K price threshold on DraftKings. That's good. That's what will make the cutoff.
I'll maintain my my credibility then. I think Tua Tagovailoa is a really good play this week. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty with the Miami offense. I think that's going to keep his ownership down. But again, like you come back to the Stokastic tools. I mean, we have a top stack tool. Miami's top 5, and Tua has the lowest QB ownership percentage of that top 5, like by far. Like he's trending with under 5%. And the thing I like about him, it's really easy to dish out double wide receiver stacks with Tua, because I mean, yeah, like there's some question about Tyreek Hill, and I'm not even like that big into Tyreek Hill this week. Like I actually think fading his props is something that I'm going to be interested in, but like it's very simple. Like it's him and Waddle. I mean, Jalen Waddle to me also is you can get even more low ownership if you just leave Hill out of the stack and go with just Jalen Waddle, because Waddle's projecting so much lower than Hill and ownership right now. I think that'll come closer to being even by game time, but like with him having the early week injury issues. But I really like Miami, man. I mean, you've got kind of an aging Patriots defense. You've got Mike McDaniel, who knows what he's been dialing up like the last 2 weeks. I think that just the unknown factor is keeping people off him. But like, let's not forget, we had a 75% completion rate with Waddle and Tua last year. I think that connection is going to really just carry over. And then who knows what Tyreek Hill can bring us. So good value there, good ownership. I'm definitely into Miami this week.
I have one really low owned GPP dart throw that I'm willing to take some shots on in large field tournaments. For me, that's going to be Trey Lance this weekend too. If he would have played a little bit better in preseason, I think people would have been all over Trey Lance in week 1. Like think about when it came to yearly drafts, best ball, people were talking up Trey Lance and going crazy about him early in the offseason, especially because of his rushing upside. And then he just didn't look all that good in preseason, and people kind of cooled on him. But to the point now where he can get 1% ownership on Trey Lance in large field tournaments, this is another quarterback that I'm willing to play naked out there. He's cheap. He has a lot of rushing upside. There's a lot of variance here, but it's variance at 1% ownership, and there's clear upside there. So I think he's the guy that I'm going to take a stand on in tournaments and maybe get to, 7, 8 to 10% of Trey Lance, just be well over the field. Rebecca, I'm going to ask you, do you have any takes on Trey Lance or any other punt quarterbacks? If not, it's okay. We can move on to running backs.
Yeah, I started hearing only recently everybody, well, I mean, besides like last year, but I recently heard a lot of people, I think just like on DFS sites, saying stuff about Trey Lance. So I thought he actually was going to be projected for a higher ownership. So I was surprised. He's at that threshold where he might just be a little, I mean, I shouldn't even say too expensive, because he's, what is he, 6,000 on DraftKings. That's a pretty happy medium. But if you're like, it depends which contest you're doing. If you are looking for something more stable, I mean, there's Tannehill. I mean, he will get you a certain amount of points. You can't expect too much more than that. So high floor, low ceiling. But if you're playing something where you just want him to not screw up entirely, you could do something like that, because he's like in the 5s. What if Devontae has a breakout season with someone other than my quarterbacks? My Packers. If he does really well, a car could be a nice option. He's so cheap too. So I know, like when I was telling people that I was thinking about him, they're like, "You're insane." But I mean,
it does feel like that game is going like a little bit under-owned, doesn't it? Like that Raiders Chargers game. I mean, that game just screams like 30 to 34 or something, doesn't it? I mean, and the studs aren't that hard to fit in, because like there's still a lot of value out there for week 1.
Yeah, and there's so many completions, because like his receivers have amazing hands. There's Renfro, who, I mean,
well, and he's super accurate, right? Carr is. So I mean,
yeah. I mean, there could just be a lot of throwing touchdowns if it's going back and forth. I think that it's not as bad of an idea as some people made me feel like. But
and by the way, to tie this into the tools that we have over on the site, if you look at the top stacks that we have on Stokastic right now, the Chargers, the 3rd overall highest odds of being the top stack on the slate, and then the Raiders are the 5th highest, and both of them fairly low owned. So there is definitely some math and some of the data we have on the site as well that would say that, hey, these are 2 of the 5 teams that are most likely to be highest scoring. They're playing against each other, so there's obviously correlation to be had there. So I do think just from that standpoint, this game stack would make some sense. And We'll talk about more of those pieces here in a second. But if you guys do want access to more of the tools that we have over at Stokastic.com, we currently have a deal right now for the start of football season. It is using the promo code Scramble. So you sign up at checkout, use the promo code Scramble, and you will get 7 days of all of our NFL tools for just $7. Just make sure to sign up using that promo code Scramble at checkout. But let's move on over to the running back position now. And Christian McCaffrey, he's healthy. If you guys remember, back when we last saw Christian McCaffrey healthy, which is forever ago, it's like when Geoff and I were last doing this show together, Christian McCaffrey was very frequently very expensive and the most popular running back on DraftKings and FanDuel, basically every single slate. Now for today, or for this weekend, I should say, there's no crazy chalk, but McCaffrey is coming in as the highest projected owned running back right now. 22% over on DK, 20% on FanDuel. Geoff, do you like rolling with a chalky Christian McCaffrey? And do you think that he's able to stay somewhat healthy this season?
Yeah, I mean, the health thing, I'm kind of like a lot of people in the space. Like, it's just, I mean, it's not even worth talking about football. Like, you get injuries. I mean, it's like at some point in a guy's career, he's going to be injury prone. I mean, unless you're like Frank Gore or something like that, right? And you're a freak in nature, you're going to have an injury. So, I mean, worrying about Christian McCaffrey's injuries, like, my God, like, worry about like a tornado tearing down your house too, I guess. I don't know. Like it's just not even something that I really sit here and spend much time thinking about. But I mean, unless you live in like the tornado alley or something, I guess that's a legit worry. But like for me, McCaffrey it's fine. It's just like with this slate, the way it sets up, I don't really want to play any of the top running backs, to be honest, because I just look at the guys in like the high 6K range, the low 7K range. And I just like, they're just all looking good. Like they're all solid. They're all coming in with lower ownership. I mean, we just talked about the Chargers game. Like Austin Eckler just eviscerated the Raiders in both. I think he scored like 4 touchdowns in 2 matchups against them. Like if he's coming in with lower ownership, we'll go there. I mean, Kamara, he's playing Atlanta. I mean, and then you can go down. Like Aaron Jones could lead the league in targets or something this year. There's tons of good plays down there. So it's not necessarily an anti-McCaffrey take. It's just, there's just better spots down the board. And like all 3 of these top guys with Taylor, Henry, McCaffrey coming in with decent ownership. Right. So I'm kind of okay leaving the top of the board. I wouldn't like, if again, like you're talking, like you got a GPP pool, you don't need to fade these guys completely. I still think Derrick Henry has a very good chance of posting like 35 points, but I'm not really like huge into like going big on any one of these 3 where I have to go massively overweight or something.
So I have made one very preliminary build, and I did get Christian McCaffrey coming out as my most owned running back in the first build that I've done. That's DraftKings specific. I do think for DK, it makes for a stronger play than FanDuel, mostly because he's only $8,500 on DK. We're getting the PPR bonus. And the other thing too, when it comes to Christian McCaffrey, I know people are going to be like, oh, he's going to get injured. If there's any time that Christian McCaffrey is going to be healthy, it's week 1 after he hasn't played football in forever at this point. Like if you want the best optimal chance of getting Christian McCaffrey healthy, this is it. This is the spot. So I'm probably on the high end going to be mixing and matching some of these guys. McCaffrey is going to be my preferred option. Rebecca, if you're spending up for one running back this weekend in large field tournaments, who would be your choice?
See, actually, so I'm opposite of the take against the expensive running backs, because when I looked at the field, I was like, I don't know which one would be the best one. They're all expensive, but they're all like such big opportunity there that I don't want to miss out. I don't want to pay up for one and then the other one goes off. So like Jonathan Taylor, McCaffrey, Henry, and then you got Aaron Jones, who, I mean, how could he not have a huge game? So if there was only one I was paying up for, I guess McCaffrey. Like I'll probably make some lineups where he is like my expensive one, and then I try to find value somewhere else. But I am making a lot of lineups where I'm just stacking the best running backs because they're all playing defenses that they should score a lot on. It's week 1. There has been so much movement with wide receivers during all the trades. And I think that unknown means more touches for the running backs. I just feel like my gut wants to go with like the comfort, and I'm not worried about an injury week 1. Like week 2, week 3, week 1, I'm just like, go for it. So I am trying to find value in my quarterback and elsewhere, and I'm stacking the expensive running backs just to have a new strategy, because a lot of times I just try to get the most expensive wide receivers and then find value in the running backs, but then the wide receiver busts, and so I kind of want to avoid that and just play something more safe.
Yeah, and there are a lot of running backs who maybe wouldn't think traditionally as value in terms of these aren't running backs that are like 4K or 5,000. They're not backups that are stepping into a starting spot. But Geoff, we do have a lot of mid-range running backs that are cheaper than we would typically see them that are expected to have pretty big fantasy seasons. So guys like Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift, that all have pass catching ability, are going to be on the field a lot. And then are also just guys that are like in that mid 6K range over on DK with PPR bonus. I'm curious, is there anybody that you're prioritizing like the mid-range of that pricing at running back? Because I do think there are going to be a couple of really big performances from these guys, and they're going to be guys that are like $2,000 more expensive a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm gravitating towards this range, like you mentioned. I mean, again, just look at where we were drafting, like Mixon, Harris, like even Swift. A lot of these guys were going like back end first round, right? So think about that now, where they're projected. You know, they're obviously $2,000 cheaper than like the top end running backs. You know, I look at this and like I see chat throwing out a couple names. It is a pretty interesting spot for Joe Mixon, like off the top, I think. I mean, again, like the Steelers could just, I mean, with the turnovers, like from Trubisky that's coming, their bad O-line, the opportunities here for Mixon, I mean, they could just be endless. I mean, this could be like another 30 touch game. And we saw towards the end of the last season, like the Bengals are not scared of giving Joe Mixon like 30 carries in a game. So again, it's the start of the year. He's fresh. I think that for just pure upside purposes, he's got to be kind of at the top of your list. But like, I mean, I mentioned the Lions off the top. I mean, I think DeAndre Swift, like stacking Lions is really something you could look at. He's going to be on the field a ton. Goff absolutely loves the short pass game, and he's actually pretty good at it too. So I think Swift is fine, but yeah, Mixon is the guy like in that range that I would probably gravitate towards first for GPPs. I think Aaron Jones is absolutely playable. But yeah, it would kind of be Mixon with like, you know, Jones and Swift kind of being behind it. And I think Nick Chubb is also a player who, I mean, again, I can't remember off the top of my head where he's projecting for ownership wise, but he's got pretty strong projections and just in terms of our like, are just, you know, his stats for the week and like what he's doing. I think he's projected as like the third leading rusher, and he's actually coming in like at like around 6% ownership. So again, all these guys are kind of playable, and I don't mind mixing and matching a lot of these guys either. So.
Yeah. And I do think one thing that makes the running back position pretty interesting from a week one standpoint is typically this is the position we get the most value at, because running back is where the most players get hurt. It's where the most players are ruled out. And we pretty frequently have backups that are stepping into starting spots. That's just not the case in week one. Everybody is relatively healthy. And as a result, there are no real cheap players that I see picking up a whole bunch of ownership. Rebecca, are there any cheap running backs that really stand out to you? I kind of think this is a range that I'm going to kind of be avoiding, but is there anybody you want to try to talk me into? And if not, that's okay.
Actually, not. I mean, I wouldn't in good heart want to talk anybody into it, because I got really lucky last year. I went with the Chalk Robinson week one, and he was supposed to be that cheap running back that just like went ham week one, and he didn't show up. So I thought I was done for. Luckily, like the rest of my team made up for it, which normally wouldn't happen. So I got I got really lucky there, but I don't want that scenario happening again this year. So I'm a little scorned by taking the value in the running back. I think, you know, I would look week two to do that a little bit more, just because then we kind of have more of an idea of how teams are looking, what else they're going to try to do. But week one, they just go to what they're most comfortable with. So to find the mid-range guys who, you know, the quarterback's comfortable with, like Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, I mean, perfect. Mixon, he could have 30 carries easily. I mean, he could also not touch it, but like that stuff seems to happen like later on in the season. Right away, you default to what's natural, and what's natural is handing the ball off 30 times to Mixon. So I really like that play too.
Yeah, I think all those guys make sense. There's a lot of, and the other thing too about this late, I feel like every single name value running back, at least for DraftKings, is a little bit underpriced this week. Maybe Jonathan Taylor's fairly priced in 9,100, but he was more expensive than that last year. And if you look at a lot of these running back pricings over on FanDuel compared to DraftKings, for instance, Taylor 10-2, McCaffrey 9,500, Kamara's 8,500, Henry's 9,700. So I do think the pricing is a little fair on FanDuel than it is on DK. But overall, there just aren't that many cheap running backs that I like. Geoff, are there any cheap running backs that you like getting to for this weekend? There's not a single player that's priced below 6K on DK that's projected for double-digit ownership at running back.
Yeah, I was literally just going to say that. I mean, like it's a weird week one because like usually there's a guy at 4K or something. But I mean, you can look at the entire 5K range on DK and like, I mean, I hate to say this, but like you can basically just play who you want. Like Travis Etienne, sure. You think he's going to like catch a bunch of passes and be like Christian McCaffrey light, and James Robinson's coming off an Achilles, play him. Ramondre Stevenson, you think he's going to like take over the bell cow role? Good, play him. AJ Dillon's playable because, you know, he could get like 20 touches if the Packers are ahead. Mitchell is down there. The 49ers like touchdown favorites. He's the lead back on San Francisco, but all these guys have issues too, right? Like they're all in timeshares. Like AJ Dillon could get 15 touches and 50 yards. So the whole 5K range, like I hate to say it, but it's kind of like a dead range. I'm not sure what the true upside of these players are. And I'm probably just going to avoid it. And I will throw out one cheap running back. And I think this is kind of hilarious because what is the last 3 weeks? Who's been the most pumped player in fantasy football, Greg or Rebecca? Who is it?
It's so many. I don't because here's
at
part
the
of
running back position. At the running back position
of anybody.
Yes, of anybody in the fantasy football. Just like the best ball. You who's been the most pumped player, like ADP wise, like at running back?
I at least lately it's been Gibson, I think, right?
Really?
Ever since the Brian,
that wasn't where I was looking for.
Robinson thing.
It's Damian Pierce. It's Damian Pierce, right?
Okay.
Like
okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But I mean, no one wants to play him. Like he's projecting with like 2% ownership, and I completely get it. Like it's a terrible spot in terms of like just where he's at. You know, like they're 8-point underdogs. It's the Colts, but like Shaq Leonard is out. You've got Matt Ryan starting. I mean, like it's not like we're for sure that this Colts team is going to be anything great. Frank Reich teams have also been terrible week one. I think the Texans are very live. And if you think that Damian Pierce is a really good football player, like he's 4,800 and no one's going to play him. And I mean, I think that again, with this 5K range having so many question marks, why not go down to Pierce, who's got a like dusty old Rex Burkhead behind him on the depth chart and has already gained the trust. He's probably going to get like 20 plus touches. I really like Pierce week one. And I think it's hilarious. He's been so pumped over the last 3 weeks and now no one's going to play him in week one.
All of best ball Twitter drives me crazy because it's victory laps upon victory laps of things that haven't even happened yet. And then we're like 2 drives into the first Monday Night Football game of the season. And like everybody thinks the leagues have been decided. They've got the winning lineups or whatever. So, but yeah, actually the Damian Pierce, I think relative to ownership, it's not a bad call at all. We have him right now project for 5% ownership. That's not that much. One thing I'm going to ask you before asking Rebecca if she has any low owned targets that she likes at running back. Do you think he's going to be involved in the passing game as well as the running game? Because that's one concern I have about Pierce is it going to be a situation where they're down in the fourth quarter? And I know that Rex Burkhead is, dusty as dusty could be, but is he going to be the running back on the field in the fourth quarter if it's garbage time, or is Damian Pierce still going to have that pass catching upside?
Oh, you're asking me. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. I thought you were asking Rebecca. I mean, that's the boom bust with Pierce, right? Like, I mean, I don't have a for sure answer to that. I think that the answer is probably there's a good chance that Burkhead would be on the field. That's what gives him the lower floor. But the thing is, again, like you can go into the 5K range and you have the same questions about pretty much every running back in that range. Like, is AJ Dillon going to be on the field if the Packers are down? Is Elijah Mitchell going to be on the field? Like even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like, he's got like Jerick McKinnon potentially as the passing down back. So that's why I like Pierce, because he's 4,800 and pretty much every running back above him has either similar questions or they have like a worse depth chart to work through. It's just that the opponent is just turning everyone off Pierce, which I get, but again, like we're looking for true upside. I think the true upside of Pierce is actually ahead of a lot of guys in the 5K range.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And, you look at certainly some of the other players we have in this 5K range where it's like, hey, it's Eli Mitchell. It's, Miles Sanders is here. I guess Etienne has some upside as well, like Edmonds or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like I'm pretty out on Clyde Edwards-Helaire at this point. I think he's one of the more over-owned players on the slate right now. But yeah, I think just the way you laid it out in Dameon Pierce, if people are drafting him in late rounds for his upside, kind of makes sense that he'd want to play him for low ownership in large field tournaments as well. Rebecca, any low owned running back targets, anybody that's only single digit projected owned right now that you do think makes sense in large field tournaments to maybe differentiate a lineup?
Remind me, what was Mitchell's ownership? Because I'm trying to figure out why he was so cheap.
So big. Mitchell right now is projected for 2% ownership over on DK and 1% on FanDuel.
I mean, I think that would be a no-brainer if you're going for that range, because didn't Debo say, I don't want to be a running back anymore? So I don't know. I think, and then it's easy to, I don't know. I think it would be an easy option to go to him. So it seems like it makes sense. If it doesn't end up being like a huge boom, it's not going to bust you either. So it's worth a shot.
Yeah. I mean, 1% owned, that's something that almost always is going to pop up in our simulation. Be like, hey, somebody 1% owned typically is going to end up being under owned relative to our simulations and projections. We do have a super chat right here from Teddy Wayman. He's saying, hey guys, last man in on FanDuel, head-to-head flex plays, got $5,800 left. Any thoughts? So I'm going to pull up our projections and see who looks good 5,800, because just off the top of my head, I don't remember every player and where they were priced, but $5,800. Let's see what pops up. Well, I'm looking this up. Do you have any other takes you have at the running back position, Geoff? If not, it's not a big deal.
No hard takes. No, that's pretty much it. It's just like that 5K range again. I mean, I definitely think that Mitchell is very similar to Pierce, and that like his bust factor is big, but like his upside, I would agree. Like you got the 49ers in there. He's the lead back. Like we can't say that about most backs in the 5K range. He is the lead back. And if the game flow goes to like the way it should, like he's going to get the most carries by far. So I like that one. But like, again, there's just no really cheap running backs, like huge values to think about here at RB, which is really strange for week one.
All right. So the price Teddy gave us was
$5,800.
$800.
I mean, CEH is there, but I'm kind of like with you, Greg. I don't know about the real upside. Hey, okay. I mean, we're going to get to this, but like, what about AJ Green? Like everyone's in on Marquise Brown. I feel like AJ Green is going to get like 12 targets week one, just out of necessity. And he might catch 5 passes. Yeah. Right. Like
totally.
I don't know.
For 5,800, I think the one I'd feel is the safest is probably Chase Edmonds, just because I think Edmonds is good. I know that he's going to be involved in both the pass game and the run game. The Dolphins running backs have also been pretty beat up over the last month or so coming into the season. Not that we're expecting players to be missing here, but Chase Edmonds, I think, is the one, just based on our projections and the names available there. That's the one I would feel best about. Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be another option. Since he said it's a head-to-head, I don't know that I'd want to go to. You said AJ.
It's a head-to-head. Okay,
yeah.
Never mind. You got to go with Edmonds. I would take Edmonds over Helaire too. Yeah.
For large field tournaments, we'll talk about wide receivers in a second. I think you can make a case for Green. Head-to-head's probably not where I would do that. But let's talk about the wide receivers next. And Geoff, is that going to be your wide receivers? That can be your tournament play. Is that where you want to start by talking about AJ Green?
I mean, not really, but like I do feel like he's, I mean, just out of necessity, like AJ Green is going to be just such a big part of it. And I think AJ Green's got a great chance just to catch a touchdown, because again, like he led them in red zone targets last year, and like all of the good other options are gone. And there's a very real chance we just get Kyler Murray throwing late in this game to like no coverage with them being down. I mean, maybe like Arizona gets up, but like it's still, who is he going to throw to there in those situations? I feel like Green is on just really going to get some solid targeting at the very least. What he does with them is up for debate. Like, I mean, that's obviously where he still has some some bust potential. But, if this was anyone, it feels like if this was Julio Jones in this situation, he might push for like most owned player in the league on the slate. So yeah, I still have some interest here. And again, I think it's a good leverage move off of Marquise Brown if you want to fade that. I'm not even saying you have to fade Marquise Brown, but I just feel like AJ Green not really getting any buildup. No one really wants to just like, put his name on their lips this week. And they're just ignoring the fact that like the Cardinals wide receiver situation and tight ends is it's a disaster. I mean, like people think about playing Trey McBride, who didn't see a target in the preseason. I believe like Max Williams coming off an ACL. I mean, there's no one, there's literally going to be no one out there. So.
Yeah, and Zach Ertz questionable to play, has been practicing this week. Even if he plays, it doesn't seem like he's going to be at full health, which it's kind of the status quo for Zach Ertz at this point in his career. But they're to your point, they're so banged up. DeAndre Hopkins suspended, and then you've got, they just brought in Hollywood Brown, but what is his rapport going to look like with Kyler Murray in week 1? So I could see a case for AJ Green for sure. Rebecca, let's talk about some of the good wide receivers too. We'll let Geoff talk about the shit at the position, but in terms of the good wide receivers,
I was totally on board with the AJ Green the other day.
Yeah, but they're still better. They're still better. We still got Jamar Chase. We've got Devontae Adams. We got Justin Jefferson. Which of the stud wide receivers do you like the most on this slate?
See, this slate for the stud wide receivers, like I said, there was a lot of trading. I don't really like anybody until you at least get down to like the 7. So Jamar Chase was 7-1 on DraftKings. I'm like, that's completely reasonable. And I think week 1 is the perfect time to get a deal on all these great guys who are going to be way too expensive to take from now on. I was shocked at Cooper Kupp being so expensive on Thursday, just because like I thought they start low, go high, but with him they just started high right off the bat. But it seems like, like we were saying with the running backs, they're expensive, but they will go up. I think a lot of value wide receivers are going to go up even, next week, maybe even AJ Green. So I think like in the mid range, or even in the 4s, I think you could find a lot of guys that are just really underpriced right now and won't be underpriced much longer than 1 week.
Yeah, and I definitely feel better about the cheaper wide receivers than I do about the cheaper running backs, just because like we were talking about before at the running back position, there just isn't that many guys I'm looking at the running back spot where it's like, oh, look, this 5K guy I think looks great. Like there are players that I think we could take shots on, but there's nobody I'm looking at who's around the 5K range. I think is comparable to like Juju Smith-Schuster is cheap, and he is somebody who I think could be in a really good spot this week. Christian Kirk, Michael Pittman, like these are established, really good wide receivers that are just underpriced right now. And I think one of the other things, because somebody that really does stand out to me is Juju. And Geoff, I want to ask you this. What do you make of the Chiefs wide receiver spot? Because if you look at the odds at like sports books for this weekend, almost all of these guys like, hey, 4.5 reception prop, 3.5, 4.5, because I don't really think there's a good feel on who is going to be the number 1 targeted wide receiver for the Chiefs. At tight end, we know it's going to be Travis Kelce, and he's going to most likely lead the team in targets this year. But at wide receiver, do any of these Chiefs guys really stand out to you? Because I think one of them is going to have a massive game, and I'm just not exactly sure who it is, although I'm leaning towards Juju right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on the Juju train for week 1. I really think this is it's like the perfect spot for him too, for the team to just kind of just lean on him, because the Cardinals secondary, it's just trash. I mean, I hate to just keep beating up on the Cardinals, but like they picked up a guy from the Jets waiver wire, and he's going to be like their 3rd cornerback in. Like this is, and they were weak against the slot last year. Like that's where Juju is going to be playing a lot of his. I could just see Mahomes and Juju just going nuts on this one. And I mean, like, I get that Smith-Schuster, like, he kind of had the down year, and maybe he wasn't as good as like that rookie season, but like he's still a pretty good wide receiver. Like he really is probably the best of this group. Like I drafted Valdez-Scantling in best ball too, like in the later rounds. And like, I hope he has a good year, but like he's Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Like he couldn't carve out a role on like the Packers with Aaron Rodgers and no depth chart. Like the guy here is Juju, I think. And I think that's going to show, especially in a matchup like this. I'm at 5,200 again. Chiefs like 30-point implied team total. I think he's probably my favorite target on the slate, to be honest. And I know we're obviously, it's a brand new situation. Any one of these guys, Hardman's been there, but like we've seen what Valdez-Scantling and Hardman can offer. And I think it's just limited. Like I have hopes for Valdez-Scantling as well. And I like the way they used him in preseason. I think Juju is in for a big week one, and at 5,200. Yeah. I mean, give me some of that.
Yeah, right now, if you do look at our top stacks tool, we have the Chiefs as being the team with the best odds, being the top scoring team on both DraftKings and FanDuel, 12.5% on DK, the only team over 10%. Then on FanDuel, 12.6%, the closest team behind them is the Eagles, who I also think there's some value to be had on them. And I mentioned that Jalen Hurts is the quarterback that has the best odds of landing in the optimal lineup in our simulations. Rebecca, are there any GPP wide receivers that really stand out to you this week? Anybody that's picking up low ownership that you think should be worth playing just because of the upside in large field tournaments?
Definitely. Actually, I should pull out some of my lineups because I have a lot of random names on there, but I think it's going to be the random names. Like I liked Juju a lot, but then I was like, I like him because it makes a ton of sense. And these are the plays that always flop for me. Like it makes too much sense and the world doesn't want that to happen. So like I am wary of it only because it just like seems like the things that are the smartest, most logical to me end up being like just an absolute flop. But let's see, I put even Romeo Dobbs as a pump play on one of my lineups. So, okay, if the Packers are in a sticky situation and Rodgers seems really pumped about throwing to Romeo and having him do his awesome athleticism, I think he really wants to showcase that in some way or use it because they're going to be lacking in just creativity out there with just like handing it off to Jones the whole time. So I think he's going to really try. You can tell when Aaron Rodgers is really attempting to do something and he'll get frustrated if it didn't work out because of the other people. But like when he has his mind set, like sometimes he's like, I'm going to get the ball in Mercedes Lewis' hands. And we're like, why? You don't need to. But he has it in his mind that he's going to do it. And so he just has to do it. And eventually he does it. And I respect him for that. Like he just doesn't give up, but sometimes to a fault when it comes to stuff that like maybe you should behind something else. But I think he will have a couple deep balls and just be like, will he catch it or not? And so I'm going to just make one lineup with someone like him. And then I'm a little interested in Callaway. I was looking through all the cheap guys' history, and it's surprising how many targets and how many big games a lot of these guys had. So I was also shocked that no one was on them for that reason. Like no one was commenting on these guys. But who else? I'm off the top of my head. Let me see what I put because I mean they might be a little bit crazy.
Well, it depends. If there's some totally random wide receiver that's about to come up as your most rostered player in your builds.
Oh, I remember what I wanted to say. I really think that Berrios is going to have a breakout year. I think everything has to do with quarterback chemistry. So like maybe Juju gets along with Patrick Mahomes' TikToking brother. It seems that Berrios gets along with his new quarterback, or for some reason is really trying to prove that he gets along with him and likes him. Maybe because he wants this to be a big year. He feels like it's time. So he's really trying to be on the quarterback's good side. I'm not bashing him. I was just saying I noticed this on social media. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to take you because of that. Because I think it really goes a long way when it comes to week one and you're just doing things that are like most natural, first instinct. And all the talk about practice, it seemed like, there's good chemistry between them. So I really like Berrios at 4,000. I think it's going to be a good play.
Yeah, if you guys haven't done it yet, do us a favor, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So for me in the initial run of lineups I did, I was getting to a good amount of Kadarius Toney, Geoff. And I want to ask you how you're feeling about him because I think that he is about as talented as a wide receiving prospect could be. He's capable of doing pretty much everything, great yards after the catch potential. Here's the downside. The Giants quarterback situation, fairly shitty with Daniel Jones at QB. He was a disaster last year. And the Giants still have a lot of depth at wide receiver. Like Kenny Golladay is still in the mix. Sterling Shepard is going to be healthy to start the season. Yeah. So I do think there's a chance he just gets lost in the shuffle because that happened to him a lot last year. But there were some flashes where Tony looked really good. He's only projected for 6% ownership. He's our most positively leveraged player in our Sims right now. Yeah. How do you like Tony in large field tournaments? Because I think he's going to be somebody that I'm well overweight to the field on.
It's so weird. Like I think at the start, like a couple weeks ago or like a week ago, like Tony was projecting with like high ownership, but it's completely cratered. And like, if he's going to be 5% owned, like I'm back on the train here. So I pretty much agree with everything you said here. Like he's extremely talented. I think he's got like upside to be potentially like a top 10 wide receiver at some point, but like now there's reports that like the coaching staff don't really like him. And now Sterling Shepard being back is just like, God, can we just get like one good week here where Tony is healthy and we know, and the Giants are underdogs and he could potentially see like 8-9 targets? It doesn't look like it. So I'm still going to take a shot with him because I'm just a guy who likes to play talent. And I think that the talent with Kadarius Toney is too good considering the Giants depth chart too. Like as bad as Shepard being back is, the guy's coming off an Achilles. He just got back. Like how much can he actually play week one? I don't know. We're going to really find out very quickly how much Brian Daboll doesn't like Kadarius Toney. Because if he's putting a bursted Achilles on there over Kadarius Toney week one to start, it's not a good situation, but I will definitely be taking a chance week one there. There's just too much talent. I like the game situation too. Like the Titans line is banged up. Landry's out. They don't really have a good secondary anyways. I think Tony could absolutely just burst through. Maybe the game starts poorly and Shepard isn't doing anything, and then maybe Tony comes on. Either way, it's a player at 4,100. If he was like 5,500, sure, I'm not playing him. 4,100, absolute GPP play. I'm in on him, and I like the fact that everyone else is kind of just, it's just that people just don't want to play it anymore. So
I think he's the widest range of outcomes of any wide receiver we have on the slate for this weekend, especially considering the price. If you tell me that Tony ends up playing like 15 snaps and doesn't get targeted and scores 0 fantasy points, I'd be like, yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Then if you also tell me like, oh, Tony is the Giants' #1 wide receiver, he gets targeted 12 times and has some massive game with 130 yards and a couple of touchdowns, I think he's the talent for that as well. So the confidence here is minimal, but I know that there's upside here, and the field isn't really playing him right now. So that's somebody that makes a lot of sense for me in terms of what I'm looking for in upside in large field tournaments. Rebecca, do you have any final wide receiver takes you want to throw out there before we move on over to the tight ends?
It's so funny that this guy is reading my mind because Tony was the next one I was going to say. I was on him so hard last year. I had him in that game that he got hurt, and he still had like a couple of touchdowns for me before he went out with an injury. So I was like, no player can play like one quarter and a half. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a full half, but he scored more than like anybody else at any price that week. It was awesome. I was just like, if only we could see what you could do like without the injury. I feel like this guy could just, be amazing. But you scared me when you said he wasn't getting along with the coaching staff, but it's worth a shot. So is there anybody else you said you wanted me to add to that list?
You don't have to. I was just wondering because to make sure that we didn't pass over something.
Yeah, there's one more guy I wanted to mention to see like what you guys thought. But Marvin Jones, like last year, I feel like he was really chalky in the beginning of the season. Everyone thought he was going to do so well, and then he just was like medium. He was never scoring. He would get all these passes. He would do so much work, and then he didn't see the end zone until like towards the end of the season. But I feel like he's primed to have just like a big start to this year. And he's 4-1 or 4-4 on DK. I love that. That's perfect price. It's awesome.
Yeah. So for me, I in general just think this is a good buy low spot on the Jaguars entering the year, because remember what everybody thought about Lawrence coming into last year? Generational quarterback prospect, was like a can't miss future superstar. And he just kind of underwhelmed his first year in Jacksonville. But was it because of him, or was it just because the organization kind of sucks and all the stuff with Urban Meyer? I think it was probably a combination of factors, but I still think there's a lot of talent with Lawrence. And if he's going to have a breakout season, which I probably think is more likely to happen than not, I think that we would have to assume that Christian Kirk and or Marvin Jones would probably have pretty big seasons. So I think just based on the talent they have at quarterback and the potential there, I don't mind buying low on Marvin Jones, or Christian Kirk also is a wide receiver that I really like playing in the mid-range for this weekend. Geoff, do you have any Jaguars takes? I know that I know you work with Emerson a lot over at DK, and he's the only fan of the entire team.
I do have a Jaguars take, but it's DST related, Greg. So look, the Commanders are projecting, the last I looked anyways, as the most chalky defensive play on the slate, or they're up there anyways. I just play the Jaguars, man. Like, we don't know. It's DST, like Greg says. I mean, fuck DSTs. We don't know what's going to happen. Play the other team. Trayvon Walker could sack Carson Wentz 3 times, go for a touchdown or something. I just like that play. But to Rebecca's point, I would probably rather play Zay Jones or Marvin Jones than Kirk. I just like the cheapness. And I think Marvin Jones, I mean, we know Marvin Jones can, he's just a good red zone player. He's a good end zone target. So let's play for the multi-touchdown upside. I like that call for sure.
All right. So let's move on over to the tight ends. And, tight end for the longest time has been the most difficult position to fill in DFS. And we've got a spot now where Travis Kelce is going to end up being one of the most popular players on this slate, because there's no more Tyreek Hill in Kansas City. We don't know exactly what's going to happen to all of his target share, but it stands to reason a lot of that is going to go to Travis Kelce. So he's one of the most popular players on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Rebecca, are you going to be riding a chalk Travis Kelce this weekend?
Well, I rode him for week 1 Millie last year. I mean, I was scared.
Obligated Rebecca to put him in a lineup.
he scored right at the end, and I was just like, okay, I love you, Kelce, but at your price, like your wide receiver price, Mahomes was having a strange year. I'm still not over that. So I'm not going to pay up for a tight end. I think you can get the cheapest value play on your lineup in the tight end spot. Like Max Williams, shout out to him, because I went to college with him. I had a couple classes with him. I couldn't believe how much he was scoring last year, and then he got hurt, unfortunately. But, maybe that's a really good cheap play. There, even if you went mid-range tight end for week 1, because like Goff will be really comfortable with Hawkinson. He'll get a lot of targets. Then you have Goddard, which I don't know, he was underwhelming me for most of the season last year and then really picked it up. So like maybe he starts off with a bang this year. I like Goddard's price. Kelce's like, once it becomes really chalky, I kind of start to look the other way. I like expensive guys when everyone's afraid of the price, so they don't do it. But this one's like, everyone's going to do it. They're not afraid of the price. They're going to lose value in the running backs to take him. And we have no clue what's going to happen with this offense. Like, they're one of the biggest question marks to me. Like, maybe Mahomes has another strange year. I don't know. I'm not going to take the chance.
Yeah, so I know we got somebody in chat right now. We've got Joseph Baffy was saying Hill's targets are going to go to Juju. Kelce is already getting receptions. How many more can he get? I think we're about to find out. I think there's a chance. Travis Kelce, I think, is live to lead the league in receiving this year, because I really do think that he could pick up. Obviously there's a cap. He's not going to get targeted 20 times per game or anything like that. But I think Travis Kelce could end up seeing a little bit more target volume than he had before. When you consider the positional value to be had as well. Like, yeah, I do think that Travis Kelce could see a few more targets. But Geoff, what are you doing with the tight end position here? Because I'm kind of thinking I'm just going to play a lot of chalk Travis Kelce and differentiate elsewhere, because I do think this is a hard piece to get away from.
I mean, I'm more on Rebecca's side of this for sure. And again, I don't love like getting away from chalk or getting away from really good players just because of the matchup. But like, Vance Joseph's system is really good at like limiting tight ends too. That's another thing. I mean, and it's been like that for a couple of years now in Arizona. And again, like I like the idea of Juju Smith-Schuster not being like super chalk on the slate, but being, I think, too cheap for the number 1 wide receiver. So I would rather pay up for Mark Andrews in the spot, to be honest. Again, like you can go over to Stokastic. Our ownership projections, super useful there, guys. I mean, he's trending with like less than half of the ownership of Kelce. The boom bust, Andrews is clearly second. Kelce is definitely first in the boom percentage, but in the boom bust tool. But like Andrews is right there. And you got, angry Lamar Jackson coming out week 1. Doesn't have that new contract. who is he throwing the ball to against it? Like it's Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is essentially the wide receiver one there too. So I'm okay. Like I would rather pay up for Andrews in that spot and then mix and match with like the Chiefs wide receivers to get my exposure there. I do think there's quite a few playable, like cheap tight ends though. I think like wide receiver, there's better value here than there is at running back, which is kind of interesting. Goddard is certainly playable against, against Detroit, but I'm going to throw out this name, Pat Freiermuth at 4,200. Led the Steelers in receiving in the preseason. Our guy Mitch, I mean, clearly maybe not so great throwing to the outside, but down the middle, certainly is got a big tight end now to throw to. Cincinnati isn't good down the middle covering either. That's the weakness of their defense. I like Freiermuth at 4,200, I think, is a pay down. And it's a really easy comeback play, like run it back with if you're doing like Burrow chase stacks or something. So
yeah, Pat Freiermuth at 4,200, he's only projected for 3% ownership. I don't know that I'm going to be able to prioritize him or anything, but as far as low-owned tight ends go, I do think he's one of the viable ones where, there are a lot of the other cheap 3K tight ends are guys that I don't really want to go towards. So the players that are similarly priced with similar projection or similar ownership projections to Pat Freiermuth, it's guys like Mo Alley Cox, Brevin Jordan, Daniel Bellinger. Like, I don't want to play those guys. So I do think relative to the other guys with comparable ownership here, I do prefer Pat Freiermuth to them. We got a super chat here from our guy, Jorge Giacomi. And Jorge, whenever he asks us a question, the next thing I know, I look up at the top of DFS leaderboard and he's winning like $50,000 or $100,000. So Jorge's question, thanks for all the info provided, guys. Rookie Fantasy Cruncher NFL question. First using Fantasy Cruncher for NFL, do you guys set stack sizes using team stacks or just set rules on position stacks? So for me, I make rules in the position stacks. I'll do it. QB has to be with one pass catcher, wide receiver / tight end, or depending on the team, it might be two, because you could also set rules and make it only specific to certain teams. So it might be Patrick Mahomes. It'd be like, well, if I'm playing Patrick Mahomes, I might be more apt to make double stacks of them. Trey Lance, that's somebody I'd be more apt to potentially play naked or only one stack. Like I wouldn't want to force a double stack with Trey Lance. So I like using the position stacks. It's something that works for me. And I also find it the easiest to use because I do find that if I'm going to make each individual team stacks and then do all the individual different pairing combinations, it could be really time consuming. And I've just found the other works for me better. So why not do the thing that works best for me? That's also the least amount of time consumption possible. So I like using the player stacks. And if you have any other questions, just message me in Discord and I'll answer them. In terms of the tight end position, Rebecca, is there anything else you want to talk about at this position? If not, then we're going to be talking about our favorite stacks that we would play in tournaments, and then we'll be done for the day.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick note that tight ends, I am either going low or high and middle, just like been scoring too many times. Like you just lose value if they don't score. Hunter Henry, 38. I feel like he was more expensive last year. That's a really great option week one. Like young quarterbacks are very comfortable throwing to tight ends. I think that might be underlooked. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about him. So I was like, just give me a random solid targeted dude at 3,800. That's perfect. But I tend to stay away from the mid 4s to 5. But if I did go that route, Freiermuth would be it.
All right. So that all makes sense to me. Once again, guys, do us a favor. If you haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And don't forget that if you've not signed up at BetMGM yet, you place a $10 bet on anything, but only for this weekend when you sign up for the first time using one of the links below. You can find it in the description box or in the comments below. You click on that link, you head on over to BetMGM, you place $10, and they're going to give you $200 for free. You have to be an idiot not to take advantage of this. So maybe like Mike Lawrence producing, maybe he can't figure it out, but everybody else, they're going to be way on top of this. So go take advantage of the offer that we have over at BetMGM. But here's how we're going to finish the show heading into week one of the NFL season. Geoff, if you were playing one single entry lineup and we're only making one stack, quarterback to a wide receiver, tight end, or it could be a double stack, what would you be choosing?
Man, just the whole oneness of it makes it so resolute and finite. But I am actually going to go with the stack that Rebecca mentioned. And it's one I actually wrote up at the start of the week. I'm going to go with Carr and Devontae Adams, because I think it's so easy to come back with the skill players from the Chargers, and you can get exposure to Herbert's upside with Mike Williams and Eckler, and you can fit in the value guys like Juju Smith-Schuster we talked about Damien. I talked about Damian Pierce. I think it's very, very viable. And I think that just that stack as a whole has so much upside going on their own. Let's go with it. I know that all the narratives, the almost dying, the whitewater rafting narrative. Let's go with Carr and Devontae Adams.
Rebecca, how about for you? Playing one lineup this weekend, and if you were, what would be the stack? There could be a quarterback with one wide receiver, running back, tight end, could be a double stack. What is that you would choose?
I think the one that makes most salary sense is Burrow Chase. And I know it sounds like almost cliche to say that at this point, because last year, there was so much hype around that. I mean, they would have some unbelievable games. It's a home game. I think Burrow's kind of underpriced. No one's giving him any love. And he's just the type of guy who just shows up when he's least expected, but then flops when he's most expected. So perfect price for Burrow, perfect price for Chase. Could be a huge game.
All right, Geoff, I'm going to take the other side of the one you had before. We talked about the Raiders game a lot. I'm going to go Derek Carr to Darren Waller. And I think you make it a triple stack as well with Devontae Adams in the mix, although Adams is really expensive this weekend. But I think that the Derek Carr to Darren Waller combination is one that saves a lot of salary. There's also a lot of upside there. That is the game that, at least per our tools, has the overall best chance of being the highest scoring from its stack perspective. So I like getting to the Chargers-Raiders game a bunch. I think all three of us do. So that's the game that I'm going to be eyeing, particularly for single entry lineups. Guys, that does it for us. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done it yet, one more time, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and good luck this weekend.